Hey guys, and welcome to another quick episode of Digital Classroom. We're gonna wait if we see if all the streams are correct. So Anneweek is checking Facebook and YouTube already is live, so that's great. Now these are the kind of broadcasts that are not planned. These are totally unplanned. So we think of something and then we actually broadcast it to you guys. And we got a lot of questions in lately about my whole obsession with vintage lenses. So in today's live stream of Digital Classroom, we're going to talk about our old vintage lenses, how you can use them on a modern camera, what you can do with them, but most of all, where you have to watch out for and which brands you can buy. And I'm going to talk a little bit about the system. So join us for today's Digital Classroom online. You can ask questions on Facebook and you can ask questions in the chat on YouTube. So it's going to be awesome. So let's start the trailer so you guys know what you're watching. And of course, we're very grateful for our two sponsors, BenQ and Rogue. If you're in the market for a new monitor and you want the best Adobe RGB monitor, well, check out BenQ because they do hardware calibration and everything more. And if you are into small strobes, small flash, speed lights or whatever, check out the Rogue Expo Imaging products. They even have a flash bender with my name, so I really love those guys. Hey guys, today it's all about vintage lenses and vintage lenses on new cameras. Now, let's go back in time. I really love analog photography. So the smell of developer, well, okay, that's the part that I do like, but not really. So a while ago, I started doing my own developing again. So C6, C41, E6, C41, and of course black and white. Now, in all honesty, I really like the process, but I stopped doing it. In all honesty, the chemicals go bad after a few times use, and I'm a really bad guy for writing everything down, so I didn't know if the chemicals were right, so I blew some images. And at one point I was going like, you know what, it's only like €2 or €3 to develop a film, and then I can just scan it in when I'm home, so hey, that's fine. Okay, so what do I still do? Well, I still shoot film, and the camera I'm shooting with, actually at the moment, I just upgraded my R4 to the R7. So this is the Leica R7. And these are pretty much affordable. Now, I have to be honest, prices are going up like crazy. And I know why, because it's just so cool to shoot with. Another camera I really like to shoot with is actually the Yashica Mod, which is a twin reflex camera. I have it behind me. A really cool camera. And of course, we love shooting with the RC. But the RC is not really a camera you bring with you on a holiday. It's rather big, so we don't want to do that. So I love shooting film. Now, when you shoot film, you of course have those old analog lenses. And one of the first things you really see when you have an analog lens is they're all a little bit different. Now, of course, they're all different, right? Because in the old days, there wasn't any standardization of lenses. You of course had Leica, which made every lens with hand. They filed everything down with hand. It was absolutely amazing how they did it, and very expensive. You have Minolta, you have Canon, Nikon, you have Takamura, you have all these kind of lenses. But the other thing is, nowadays when you look at cameras, you have Canon, Nikon, Sony, Fuji, and some other brands, of course, Olympus and whatever. And they all have different mounts. Now, in the old days, it was exactly the same way. One of the most used mounts was actually the M42 screw mount. Now, this is very easily recognizable if you take the lens of your camera. I have one here. Let me switch to another camera for you guys. So this is an M42 screw mount. It's really easy to recognize because you can actually screw the lens off your camera. And at that point, you can actually see that it has a little bit of a, well, literally a thread. So you can just screw it on your other camera. That's why they call it the screw mount, right? The other thing is actually a bayonet. Now, let me switch back to this one again. This is more like a bayonet mount. And this is a Leica M converter. So it's not a Leica M lens. I don't have the kind of money for Leica M lenses because those are really expensive. This is a Leica R lens with a Leica M converter. And I'm going to tell you now why I use those converters. Now, I always loved shooting with vintage lenses for the very simple reason they have their own character. I always tell people like it's a little bit like a family. You have the shy kid in the corner, a little bit of a gothic maybe. When as soon as they see light, they go like, oh, light, and they go into lens flare. It's the same with lenses. So some lenses are very prone to lens flare. Some lenses are a little bit soft, but they have this beautiful bouquet. That's the out of focus areas. You have some lenses that have swirly bouquets. They're just absolutely different. Now, I don't say that today's lenses are bad. I only say that today's lenses are often a little bit too perfect. Now, there are moments where you, of course, love a perfect lens. Sharpness from left to right, center to bottom, and sharp at f2.8, and an amazing bouquet. It's perfect. Now, just go and think. I love tinting my images, and I love doing other stuff with my images. Now, the first thing I often do when an image comes into Photoshop is change the colors a little bit, add a little bit of a vignetting, and if I have time, I always like to blur the sides just a little bit. That's so awesome. It just makes it feel more organic. It's just cool. Now, I have these perfect lenses, and those perfect lenses actually are sharp from left to right. There's no light fall-off, so no vignetting. And I have to do all that stuff, so why not just start with an old and vintage lens? So that's how it started. Now, when I shot my Canon system, the thing is you have to do manual focus on these old lenses because they're not out of focus, right? So you have to do manual focus. Now, for a Canon and Nikon, if you're still shooting Canon and Nikon, and you didn't switch to Sony yet, I'm just kidding with you. For Canon and Nikon, what you can do is actually use a different inlay for your mirror. Now, normally with digital, of course, you have out of focus, so that means that all that stuff that you were used from the old days, like the matte glass or the broken center where you have to put them up on top of each other and make the circle round, and then the image was in focus. You don't have that anymore. But you can buy different glasses for your camera. Glasses? Pun intended. So what you do is you change the glass over to the other one, and now you can autofocus your camera. In some cases, that means that you have to over-adjust your exposure by 1/3 of a stop. At least that was with the old Canon I was using. Hey, Nick, hello. You're online. So if you're online, just say hi in the chat room, and we'll just shout out your name. Hey, Nick. And then it's cool. So, okay, let's start. So, the old lenses, I lost my train of thought. Where was I in a week? I was telling about, oh yeah, on the old Canon, of course. On the Canon, you had to use that different glass, and now you could do manual focus your lenses. But, you know, one of the disappointments was often when you shoot on 1.7 or 1.8 or 1.2, that it's a little bit difficult to get that perfect focus, right? So then the cameras came in with peaking. Now, what is peaking? Peaking is actually that you see what's in focus. It's a really cool effect. So, for example, you set your peaking color on red or yellow, you turn, and you can actually see that the sharpness actually falls over, for example, a wall. That's a really cool way of getting that manual focus correct, spot on. But then you go like, yeah, really cool. And then you pick up your autofocus lens again, and you go like, yeah, that's faster. So forget about those old lenses. And then like 6 months later, you buy some old lenses again, and you try it again. And for me, it was like a wave. I really like shooting those old lenses, but, you know, manual focus, it's even with peaking, sometimes it works, and it's a bother. So a while ago, I actually got into contact with Cameraland, and they asked me to test this tech art module. Let me switch to the camera so you can actually see it a little bit better. There we go. And what it is actually, it's a module. Let me turn on the camera. And what you see is it moves your lens forward and backward. And that's how it auto-focuses your lens. Yes, you heard that correctly. It now auto-focuses old manual focusable lenses. Now, how is the performance? I did a whole video on it for, I believe, 40 minutes or so I will link that below. The performance is not stellar. The performance is not bad. It's somewhere in between. Let me put it this way. It's very usable, and I mean very usable. Now, this opened up a whole new area of shooting with these old lenses for me, because now I can use my autofocus system, and on the Sony a7R III, it's just very, very good on those old lenses. And that made it much easier. And now I find myself shooting more and more with these old lenses. Okay, let me see. We have some people online. Hey, Raymond. And Garrett, hey Frank, been a while since I saw one of your live videos. Well, Garrett, tomorrow we have a full-length 2-hour digital classroom. Today it's a test broadcast and we're mainly talking about old vintage lenses, which are absolutely cool. Okay, so now a lot of people ask me like, okay Frank, what kind of lenses do I have to buy and what do I have to be careful for? Okay, so if you go on eBay, you're gonna get really good lenses, but the price will be a little bit higher. What I advise you guys is actually go to flea markets. Now, flea markets, by the way, do you know how they get the term flea market? This was something I found out yesterday. In the old days, there was a guy on a horse, like a really wealthy guy, and he was riding his horse through a flea market. And he looked down at all the normal people and he said, my, it looks like fleas on a market. So that's where the term actually flea market came from. I don't know if it's true, but that's what they told me. And if it's on the net, it's true, I think. So anyway, flea markets. So you go to the flea market and you can buy whole cameras for 15 euros, 20 euros. That's about 25 bucks, 20 bucks. And you can even haggle the prices down. So do you buy everything? In essence, yes, you can buy any camera you see. And those lenses can be converted to your camera. There are a few things you have to be careful for. So, 1, what camera are you shooting? There's the most important thing, and that's the flange distance. Now, what is the flange distance? Now, if you take a camera, for example, this one, you have the mount. And right behind the mount, there's the sensor. Now, this is one of the cool things about the Sony cameras. The distance between the lens mount and the sensor is actually very, very small. So that means that every lens that was ever built, I think, can be mounted on that Sony. Because what does a converter do? A converter very simply just changes your mount and the flange distance. So look at this converter. This is a converter that's actually used to mount an R lens, so an R lens from Leica, on an M mount camera. And as you can see, the flange distance is different. This is the flange distance from the R lens. This is the flange distance, plus this one, from the M lens. So when I put these together, the lens will do what it's designed for. In other words, focus to infinity and focus to, let's say, 50 centimeters away. Now, if you have a Canon or Nikon, the flange distance will be bigger. So let's say this is the Sony flange distance, this is the Canon and Nikon flange distance. Now, that means for your converters, where with the Sony the converters are pretty thick, this is, for example, a converter for a Canon. You see how incredibly tiny this is? So let me switch to another camera so you can literally see it. It's a really, really thin connector. Same here, this one is, I believe, brass. So compared to those Sonys, these are really, really tiny. So what happens if that flash distance is too big? For example, you can mount R lenses from Leica on a Canon, but you have to remove the original mount lens and then put the R converter on. That means that I can't shoot them on my R7 anymore. I have to do that again, so I don't want to do that. Often it means that you use only the closer part of the focusing. That means you lose your focus ability on infinity. And you don't want that, of course. So make sure that when you buy a lens that you know for sure that there's a converter for your camera system. Now, in the case of Sony, there are so many converters out there. You can literally buy everything. But if you buy everything, do you get what you want? Yeah, that's the big problem. Now, you see my images of those old vintage lenses and you see they're razor sharp. You see the colors are really nice. The bouquet is amazing and they just look great. Does that mean that every old lens looks great? No. If you buy, for example, an old Soligor or Paramount or whatever, those lenses will probably disappoint you. So I'm going to give you some tips about which lenses I really like to buy. Now, the first one, and you see a lot of those, literally you see a lot, are actually the Petri lenses. And let me switch to this camera so you can actually see it a little bit better. This is a Petri lens. Now, those lenses are pretty good. So when you are on a flea market, what should you check out in those lenses? What should you, well, be aware of? So let me take one that I can literally easily change. There we go. Okay, the first thing, and this is a Helios, by the way, Helios lens. The first thing you have to check is the aperture. Does it work? Is it stiff? Or does it stick somewhere? So how do you check it? Well, let me switch back to this camera and I can show you by using it. That's why the light is over there. So this is what you do is you turn the aperture dial, and it should be really smooth and nice. Do you see that? So you see the aperture opening up. You see that it's really smooth and nice. So don't have to force it. It just opens up. Now make sure that there's no oil or grease on your aperture blades. And I can actually do that for almost every lens. So let me take this one and just close the aperture and do it under another angle. And you see that all my lenses are really smooth and easy. Now this is the first thing you have to do. Make sure that that aperture is 100% smooth and easy. Okay, in between we have some questions. The overall stream quality is way better than usual. Is it fiber finally? Yes, it's finally fiber, and we're now broadcasting actually on 1080p. So we're also broadcasting on a higher resolution. Hey Frank, I'm watching your stream on my TV, so not able to use chat on there, but a quick hello from my iPhone. Hey Trevor, how are you? Okay, so the brands which I like to find. Now, of course, the Helios, this is a lens, write it down, Helios. You really have to get this one if you're into funky bouquets. What is a funky bouquet? It's like a swirly bouquet. It's like dancing. It's cool. And this is the Helios, let me see, 2/58, which is actually a 42.2. Yeah, got it? The 42.2, 58.2. So that means it's an aperture of f2 and it's 58 mils. But it's called a 44.2. This is a really cool one. The other brand that you really have to watch out for is, of course, the Petris, which I just mentioned. And this is a lens made in Japan. It's Petri 1.855, really cool lens. The other ones that I'm always on the lookout for, and these are absolutely stunning. These are actually, let me switch back to that camera so you can see it. These are the Takamures. Now, Auto Takamure or Super Takamure. Now, these lenses are razor sharp if you have the right one. And these lenses are just pretty cool if you get the zebras. So what is a zebra? It's an animal, but it's also a lens. You see this? Let's switch back to this camera. Sorry, I'm switching so much, but I want to show you guys really close up. So this is called a zebra. Now, these zebras can be pretty expensive and they can be pretty cheap. So make sure you get an app on your phone, like, for example, M42 Lens Mount Guide or whatever, or look online, because on flea markets you can't really go wrong, because this lens I actually bought for €2.50. It's really cheap. And it's actually going online, I believe, for $240, which is way too expensive in my opinion for an old lens. Okay, so we have Super Takamure and Auto Takamure. So Takamure. We have Petri, which is okay and really cool. The Helios, that's a nice one. The other ones that you really have to watch out for, and of course, if you know a little bit about lenses, you already know this brand, right? This is Zeiss. And Zeiss is actually what Sony now also uses. And the cool thing about Zeiss is that there are many different variations of Zeiss. There's also zebras, and there are different letterings on the lens. So sometimes you see a Zeiss Meyer, sometimes you see Meyer, sometimes you see Zeiss by Jena, and sometimes you only see Jena. Now those terms, Meyer, Zeiss, and Jena, those three, just remember those. Zeiss, Meyer, and Jena. Those three combined are always really nice lenses. Those lenses you can pay a little bit more for, and you're guaranteed to have a top quality lens. The other lenses I'm always on the lookout for, and in all honesty you hardly find them on any flea market, is actually, unless you're really lucky, is actually Leica. And Leica, I have to make one little note for, I'm a huge Leica fan. So I'm using their R7, and before that I used an R4. And I dream about finding an M, of course. But in all honesty, the prices of Leica stuff is insane. So I have some Leica R glass, which I bought pretty cheap on Marktplaats. But even then, like these lenses, which are absolutely awesome, they all go for like 5 or 6 or 10 euros. Leica, I never bought anything below, let's say, 250 euros. And at that point, you have to realize, is it really worth that much money? Now, because I'm also shooting with a film camera Leica, I just bought a few lenses, and in all honesty, when you add everything together, I have like 800 to 1,000 euro in value for lenses. And I bought them 3 years ago. If I resell them now, Are you sitting down? It's like 3,500 euros in resale value. That's insane for those old lenses. So don't get into that whole like, oh, you have to have this lens, it's only $1,000. Don't. Just buy the cheap glass, because that's the glass where you're gonna have fun with. And that's also the glass when you have the Jenna's or the Zeiss or the Meyers, where you get razor sharp performance. They're just stellar, and they retail for anything between 10 and let's say 100 euros. That's like a safe area where you go. So between 10 and $100. That's the fun area. That's the area where you get lenses like this one, the 135. And this is, let me see, this is actually a Carl Zeiss Jenna Sonar. This one is really good. It rivals any lens that's out there today, and it's just an awesome lens, and I paid, I believe, $60 for this. And I recently bought a 200mm on an auction site. This is also the cool thing if you're in the Netherlands, and I believe they're worldwide actually. Go to Katawiki and go to the don't go there because I'm there. So I'm now giving you a tip that will actually cost me some cool deals. So don't go there, but if you go to the photography part and just do ridiculous amounts of, how do you call it? Offers on an auction. So what I always do is I find the lenses that I like, and if there's a $1 thing, I always do an automatic bid for 10. Now do remember they charge you 9% extra for the auction costs, and you have to pay shipping costs. Now always scroll down and look at the shipping costs. I also get my comics over there, and sometimes you see like a really good deal, and then you see the shipping cost 37 euros. And you go like, whoa, if I add that to it, that's incredibly expensive. So always check the shipping costs. But often when they're like $8 or 8 euros, I will just make a bid like, let's say, 5 euros on an automatic bid. So it will start bidding at 1 euro, 2 euros, 3. And then sometimes I'm lucky, and most of the times I'm not. But we recently bought, what was it in a week? I believe a 200mm size for 15 euros, including sending and tax and auction fees. That's ridiculous. That lens goes for like 200-300 euros. So sometimes you're lucky, sometimes you're not. And the more people that look for it, the less lucky I will get. So don't go on Katawiki. Yes, Anne-Week, we have a question on Facebook.
Yes, somebody asked if there's any wide angle you would recommend.
Okay, any wide angles. I have a really cool Leica R28mm, which is really nice. I have some 35mm, and it's all that Takamura stuff and Zeiss Jenna, and I'm really looking for something that's even wider. Now I have a Sigma 12-24, that's not a vintage lens, that's a modern lens, which I absolutely love. That lens is amazing, it always travels with me. I would love to have something in the, let's say, fisheye range for the old vintage lenses, but they're really hard to come by. And again, I'm not going to spend 200 or 300 euros on an old lens, but I can get the same lens, out of focus and everything, on a modern camera for 100 euros more. That's ridiculous. So I'm still looking for that fisheye lens somewhere. Oh, by the way, when you go on flea markets, the most thing you will find is actually the 50mm. For the very simple reason that was the standard lens in the old days. Now, if you already have a 50mm, don't think, oh, I already got a Super Takamura 50mm, I leave that one. Don't. Get it, because all those lenses, let me put it this way. Nowadays, when a lens gets off the manufacturing belt, they're often exactly the same, they're often the same. These old lenses, they're all different. So when you get 10 Takamuras, all 10 will render slightly differently. So just find the one that you like and sell the rest on eBay or Marktplaats or whatever. Okay, let me see if we have any questions here. Do you ever use these vintage lenses for commercial work, or are they more for fun? I use them for commercial work too. The only thing is I use them for commercial work if I feel comfortable with the autofocus performance. So when I'm going outside, I'm without a doubt using those lenses. If I'm inside, in the studio, I need a lot of light to focus those lenses, because they use the system in the Sony, which is pretty good. But you have to remember, when you do a photography shoot in the studio, you're not shooting wide open. Now, a normal professional lens, and actually not professional, every lens nowadays, when you put it on your camera, it focuses on the wide open aperture. So that means if you have a 2.8 lens and you're shooting f16, what happens is it focuses on 2.8. The moment you take the shot, it actually closes down the aperture to f16 and it opens up the aperture again. Try to focus on f16, so stick it on f16. You will see that your viewfinder will get incredibly dark. and you can hardly see anything anymore. Now, these old lenses, they're actually called, sometimes they're called preset lenses. Let me see if I have a preset lens here. That's actually this one. So you can set a preset. But most of these lenses are actually the kind, and even when you use converters, the whole preset stuff doesn't really work the way it's supposed to. Now, what you do is, if you want to shoot f16, I actually have to set it on, let's say, f16. So let me just change this to this. So this is wide open. Now, this is, let me see, this is a 2.055. So this is wide open. So let's say I'm in the studio, want to shoot my model on f11. So what you see, let me see if the angle is right. One moment, guys. So what you see is now I'm actually on f11. And you see that my light is actually taking away from my focus engine. So that means now my focus is really fast. Now it will be a lot slower. And that's not even, oh sorry, that's not even on f11. This is f11. So this is normal focus, wide open, like a normal lens. Now when you take the shot, what happens in a normal modern lens is that it closes down and it opens up again. So you press the shutter, boom, strobes go off and it opens up. Now with these lenses, because they're on a converter, this is actually how it has to focus. Now this is a tiny hole to focus, right? So that actually means that the performance of your autofocus engine will be really, really slow in the studio. And what happens when you focus with less light? The performance of your autofocus drops down. So you have two options. One, you actually have more options, but two options that are important. One, you can switch to a normal modern lens that actually opens up the aperture, closes it down when the strobes goes off. That's the safest bet. The other one is use a lot of light on your model. So turn up those modeling lights to full power. Make sure that you have a lot of light on your model and then you can shoot it with. But overall with a commercial gig, I don't want to take any chances, so I'm still using my normal lenses on a commercial gig. But it's not because of the quality, it's pure of the autofocus option. So that's hopeful an answer for your question. Let me see if we have any more questions. Anna, do you have any questions on Facebook?
No.
Okay, so I don't want to take you guys too long, of course, into the adventures of vintage lenses, because it's really an adventure sometimes. I hope I explained a little bit to you guys about the vintage lenses, but there are a few more things that you really, really need to know. And hello, Slutko. How are you? So, what are the things you need to know? Well, let me take one of the Super Takamores. Let me see if I have one where it's really easily shown. This one. This one is pretty open. Okay, I don't have one here with me. No, they're all clear. So sometimes you buy a lens that is a little bit yellow. Now, some people freak out and they go on a flea market, they see a yellow lens and they go like, no, I don't want a yellow lens. Remember one thing. First off, that yellow coating can give you a really cool look in your images. It makes it a little bit more warm. What it actually is, like in the old days, and this is what they told me, and I think it's right, they used radioactive water to actually wash all the elements. That means that some lenses, especially the Petri lenses, and some of the Takamores can be a little bit radioactive. Now don't worry, it's the radioactive kind of stuff where you hold a piece of paper in front of it, it already doesn't infect you anymore. So imagine having a whole camera body in front of it. Now, I wouldn't advise you guys to go to bed and lick the back of your lens for a few hours every day, because then you will probably end up with 3 eyes or 2 noses or whatever. It's not healthy. On the other hand, even if you lick your normal professional lens every day, that's also not very healthy. So just don't do that kind of stuff. So don't freak out if a lens is a little bit yellow. Now, if you don't like that yellowing look and you go like, no, I want my lenses to be clear, you can actually very easily solve it. Make sure that you put your lens in UV lighting. So you can just put it in front of your window and just turn it every week. Now, after about 2 or 3 weeks, you have turned it all the way around, and you will see that actually the yellowing is in most cases gone. Of course, don't do it in summer because your lens will melt. Think about it. It's too hot behind the window. But UV lighting will actually solve that yellowing. And the other thing is fungus. Fungus. That's really bad. So some lenses, and you see that online, will actually have a little bit of fungus. And sometimes the seller will tell you like, oh, that's no problem. There's a little bit of fungus there, and you don't see it in the picture. Yeah, do you remember those old days? They were so awesome. Where you got your ant farm, or your guppies, your goldfish. and you only got 2 guppies, and then you went on a holiday and you came back and there were like 40, and they were jumping out of the bowl, because they multiply, and that's what fungus does. Fungus multiplies in your lens, and it's not as bad if it infects one of your lenses. The thing with fungus is that if you place one of your lenses with fungus in your closet, where you have all your other lenses, there's a huge chance that within a few weeks, all your lenses will appear to have fungus. So if you have a lens with fungus and you really like it, don't put it in the same cupboard with your other lenses, and clean it as soon as possible. Even if you don't see it in images, those lenses should be spick sparking clean. I hope that's the right expression in English, but it is in Dutch. Okay, let me see. Any other tips? I think that's about it. Yeah, and of course lens flares. Those lenses hate sun, so lens flare is awesome. So make sure that you use sun hoods if you don't like lens flare, or use your hands, because hands are the best lens flare protectors ever. So let's say the sun is coming from that side, just hold your hands like this and you can block the sun. And the coolest thing is, I sometimes do it during workshops with these lenses, you can actually use your fingers to create those really cool lighting effects on your model. Okay, that's about it for our vintage lenses. And do we have any questions on Facebook?
Nope.
Do we have any questions on YouTube? Yes, we do actually. Bert Jansen, I love them too. Yes, Bert, vintage lenses are awesome. You know, the coolest part is, ever since I've been shooting with vintage lenses, I hear a lot of people going like, hey, I have some lenses on the attic. Maybe I should take them out and shoot with it. Yes, you should. And I kid you not, you will be addicted like crazy, because they're just awesome. You see me getting all enthusiastic and warm about it. It's just freaking awesome. And another question is, Roel de Rover. Hello, Roel. How do you clean the fungus? There's a very simple reason how you clean the fungus. You take your lens. You take this specially designed. You can get them at any grocery stores or whatever. And you just throw the lens inside and you take it outside. And you wait for a few weeks. And the problem solves itself. And it's called the garbage truck. It's gone. Now, just without any doubt. If you have a really, really special lens, so don't do it for the Petris or the Takamures or whatever, but let's say you can get a really cool Leica M lens and you buy it relatively cheap and it has a little bit of fungus. Those lenses can be worth to just take the elements off and just clean it and put the elements back again. But you can do it yourself, but in all honesty, I would rather hire a company to do it. Because again, fungus can be incredibly bad for all your other lenses, and you don't want your €2,000 G Master lens to be covered in fungus, right? Oh, one more tip, by the way, and that's actually with scratches on your lens. Now, you guys probably know, and that's not a joke, that I never clean my lenses. I like the dust on the lenses, because then as soon as I have some backlighting, I can actually get those really nice, like bubbles on my lens. Let me get the microphone right. So those little dust particles will actually light up from backlighting and create those nice little round areas. Now, some people will actually claim that if you have a scratch on your lens, that you won't see it in the image. And that's 100% correct, because the focus area is, of course, way beyond your front element. Still be very careful when you have scratches, because as soon as you start using strong backlighting, that's when those scratches can actually show up. So you have to determine for yourself. It's a €10 lens, just get it with a scratch. If it's like a lens that's €100 priced below a new lens, and sometimes you see them online, like for example G Master, that's €100 less expensive than a new lens, just go for the new lens, because scratches can really, really ruin a shot if you use backlighting. Okay, and a week Facebook?
Nope.
No Facebook, and nothing here. Okay guys, so that was it for today. Tomorrow we have a full-length episode of Digital Classroom. We're gonna do some really cool stuff, and that cool stuff actually is experimenting with light. What you can do with one light source. We have a question in that actually asked me like, how can you create your own beauty dish from a softbox? So I'm gonna do a shoot with a very, very cheap softbox. We're gonna use a deflector in it and create a freaking beauty dish from that really expensive, not softbox. So that's going to be really cool, and we're going to do some lighting tips and of course some retouching and your questions. And you can still send in your images to community@frankdorov.com, and I will actually retouch your images during Digital Classroom and give you a critique. Now, if you really like what we do, I would really advise you guys to actually go to our Patreon website. Now, Patreon is really cool. You can commit for $1, $5, 10, whatever. And you get a closed-off Facebook group where you can discuss with other Patreons. You can send in your images once a month, and I will do a full video on retouching and photography tips and whatever. And you have the bat phone where you can actually get in direct contact with me if you are in a situation where you go like, I don't know what to do. Let's call Frank. Well, you can do it. Of course, take into consideration the time zones, and I will respond as fast as possible to help you guys out. And that's on Patreon. And on Patreon, even if you don't need all the help and you go like, hey, I'm a professional photographer, but I really like what you do, $1 a month already helps us enormously to build this channel. And Anouk, you had a question?
Yes, something about a all-round zoom lens. Is the Sigma 24-105 f4.0 a good all-round zoom lens?
Okay, somebody asked, a good all-round zoom lens, the new Sigma 24-105 f4, is that a good all-round zoom lens? Now, I have to be honest, a few years ago, Sigma was okay. I had some Sigma lenses and it was not that stellar. I was going like, yeah, it's nice. But I like Canon more, or Sony, of course, or Nikon. But Sigma has made some tremendous amounts of effort to get into the market. And at this moment, if you have an art lens, oh my, they're absolutely stunning and amazing. I would dare to say that they're probably one of the best lenses you can get at the moment, the Art series. It's just stunning. Now, in all honesty, personally, I wouldn't go for an f4 lens. I would always try to go for an f2.8 if you have the money for it. The zoom range 24-105 sounds really, really nice. So I don't know the lens, but I should test the lens, of course, if I want to know for sure. So Sigma, if you're listening, send me one of the lenses to test for the Sony mount, of course. But 24-105 is amazing. I would prefer 2.8 for the very simple reason you often are in situations where you don't have enough of light, and then especially when traveling, you want to make sure that you can focus on that 2.8 and of course also shoot on 2.8. It's still a full step. Now, one of the lenses that I really liked from the old days, and that's the weird thing, that's about vintage lenses also. Minolta has some really cool lenses which you can actually straight use on your Sony A mount. So you have to get it converted to E mount, but you can use it on the A mount, that's the A99. Now be careful, there are some lenses out there that use a system called motor zoom. So you twist and it actually motors the zoom. Those lenses will not work on an E mount. So make sure that when you buy them, make sure that it's not the fancy lenses where you have the motor zoom, because on the A mount it works, on the E mount it doesn't. So they have this beautiful lens, a 35-200. If you have a camera with an A mount, so the Alpha 99, make sure you check out that lens. It's a Minolta 35-200. I have one. It's an absolutely stellar lens. I love to travel with it. It's a little bit not wide enough for me, 35, but the range to 200 is just amazing. Now, the other hand, you have to realize, like, is it really important if a lens is 100% sharp, or if it's really cool in colors? Really perfect in colors. In all honesty, it's about the shot. And if you can get more shots with a range of 24-105 instead of 24-70, it really makes a difference. So don't buy a lens only because it's a little bit sharper. Buy a lens because you can get more shots. And if you have the choice, I would go to 2.8. Any more questions, Anouk? Nope. No more questions on YouTube. Okay, guys, that's it. Thank you so very much for watching, and see you again tomorrow during the real. Well, this was also real. Tomorrow during the 2-hour live broadcast from Digital Classroom. And thank you so very much to BenQ and Rogue. See you again tomorrow, guys. Bye bye.